graph this inequality, absolute value of 1/2 x plus 1, and then minus 2 is less than 1. Whenever we are solving an absolute value equations or inequality, we are going to isolate the absolute value on the left hand side first. So here we have an absolute value and then minus 2 is less than 1. We should plus 2 on both sides. So let me plus 2 on both sides. Then the minus 2 plus 2 will be 0, and I get an absolute value 1/2 x and then plus 1 absolute value, and then bring down the same inequality. So I have the less than 1 plus 2, which is equal to 3. And now let's see how can we take care of this absolute value. I have an absolute value that's less than a positive number 3. So here I have two situations, right? I have two possible situations, and you can find my flashcards in the descriptions. So notice that this is the two situations that you will get. It's either you have an absolute value that's greater than a positive number, or when you have an absolute value that's less than a positive number. Okay, so these are the typical questions, and this will remind you what procedure to proceed. And I have an absolute value that's less than a positive number, so it's this situation, right? It's this case. So, well, when we have a less than case, notice that to proceed, we are going to put it inside. We're going to put it inside in between of the positive number and then the negative number, the negative version of that number. Okay, and notice that the solution, we are just going to have one interval, and that's the less than case. Absolute value is less than a positive number. If we have the greater than, if this was a greater than, then you'll proceed differently. Okay, you will have to make the inside greater than the positive number, or you make the inside less than the negative version of that positive number, and the solutions you will get two intervals. One way to remember is that this is more than, so you have more intervals, right? And this is less than, you have less intervals, and you have one of them. And I'll show you what I mean by the one interval. But to continue, I will have to put the inside in between of the positive and the negative. Okay? So the inside is 1/2 x plus 1, and I'm going to put this in between of let me write this down as the 3 here, but then I will use the same inequality, and here I'm going to write down negative 3. So the inside in between of negative 3 and positive 3. And now I have no more absolute value. I can just solve this inequality the usual way. So I have 1/2 x plus 1. I need to isolate the x, right? So first, that's minus 1 on all three sides. Minus 1 here. So plus 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay? And let's see. We have negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. Bring down the inequality and have 1/2 x, and then bring down the same inequality, and here we have 3 minus 1, which is equal to 2. Okay. So here I have 1/2 in front of the x. I need to get rid of the 1/2. We can do that by multiplying by 2, because 2 times 1/2 is just equal to 1. You can see that by doing this, right? 2 cancels out. And what we need to do right now is just multiply all three sides by 2. So I put 2 right here, and also let me put 2 multiplied by the negative 4. Okay, so I get 2 times negative 4, which is negative 8. That's less than. We maintain the same inequality because we were just multiplying the 2. The 2 was positive. If we multiplied it a negative 2, you will have to flip the inequality. Okay? So since that 2 was positive, this inequality stays the same. Negative 8 less than x. And then this one also stays the same. Less than 2 times 2, which is equal to 4. So in another word, x is in between of negative 8 and 4. Okay? And then we are going to see two ways to represent this solution. We solved it, but let's talk about how to graph this solution and graph this on the number line. First, let me indicate where the 0 is. And then I have two numbers to consider. Let me put down -8 right here, and let me put down +4 right here. And in this symbol here, x is in between of -8 and +4, but it's not including the endpoints. It's not including the -8. It's not including the 4. There was no like the line under the inequality, so we're not including these two endpoints. To show that on the graph, we have two ways to do that. Because it's just a less than, we can put an open circle at these two endpoints. And then x, it's in between of these two numbers. So we're just kind of going to coloring in between these two numbers. And this is what I mean by one interval. Because when you graph this on the number line, you just see one piece, right? One piece line segment, one interval. Okay? You just see one interval. Solution has one interval. Less than, you have less interval, and you have one of them. This is one way to remember. Okay? And this is one way to represent that inequality. Another way to do the graph, and I think you just need to do one of the graph on the test or on the exam, things like that. But another way to do that depends on which one you prefer. So again, you label the numbers, but then instead of using open circles, we are going to use parentheses for the less than signs. So let me make a note. Use parentheses for less than or just like greater than. Okay. And if that was like a less than or equal to, we are going to use brackets. The square bracket. Let me put down. We will use brackets when you see the symbol like this, less than or equal to, or when you see greater than or equal to, like that. Okay. So in this case, we can just put an open parentheses at -8 and 4. Again, x is in between of these two numbers, so just color this in. I think the first way is more official because the open circle just represents something's missing. Right? The -8, it's not including, and the +4, it's also missing from the solution. Okay? But if you choose to do it this way, if you choose to graph the solutions in this way, if the question is also asking you to do the interval notation, then you're pretty much done if you graph your solution like this. Because the interval notation, you can just read it out loud from what you have here. The interval notation is just that we are going to use brackets or parentheses to represent this interval. Okay, and again, since we are not including the -8 and then the 4, we will use parentheses. And we start by writing down the left point first, which is -8, and put a comma, and then write down the right end point, 4, and then parentheses. This is not x-y coordinate point. This is the interval notation. Even though it looks exactly like -8 comma 4 as like x comma y, but when we have the interval notation, you should just probably write down interval notation to reduce confusions. So -8 comma 4 parentheses like this. In our context here, this represents this graph, and this graph represents these solutions. And here's the answer to the first question.